Hello, folks, and welcome to the Interesting Times. I'm your guide, Lewis Wallace. Now, if you listen to Steve-O here, things are getting a bit tasty. In it, mate. Yes! Today, we're going to go over to the motherland, where old John Bull is finally incensed over this Henry Novak death. But is this going to go anywhere good? Let's find out. I want to start with the Farage response. Right? He just had this ready to go, didn't he? He's out in the countryside and everything. So this is interesting. Right off the bat, the politician who's leading the Backlash, Farage, the guy tipped to be the next Prime Minister, he's out there saying that Novak is essentially the white George Floyd. Yes, they even used the word white this time around, once that was unthinkable. It looks like they've even got permission to reverse the script on Floyd too. Farage introduces him as career criminal George Floyd. Again, once this was heresy, even for the right wing. And he's giving people permission to be angry. He reminds everyone, and I quote, remember the reaction to that, being Floyd, and the way that the police behaved. Unquote. He's appealing to everyone's latent anger at the hypocrisy of all of that. And he cries, enough of anti-white prejudice. And basically encourages white Britain to respond with pure, cold rage. That's another quote. But here's what I want to say. Nigel, you're a disgrace, mate. I thought you got into politics to keep these Polacks out of England. But in all seriousness, folks, I'm a goddamn cynic. I'm a goddamn cynic about this stuff. Look, I've been around. This ain't my first rodeo, folks. I've been watching this stuff for years. I remember it was not long ago that if you were talking about anti-white hatred, anti-white discrimination, anti-white society, people would look at you like you were a freak. They would look at you as if you had two heads. And now the next PM of the UK, most likely, is out there leading the charge against this stuff. They just flip the script on this. All of a sudden? Seriously? This is strange, folks. I think we're going to take a step back here. Look, it's not that there isn't a mandate or a market for this kind of talk. Look, but there definitely is. There definitely is a lot of anger. He is talking, in many ways, the language of the whites in Britain who are sick of the hypocrisy, sick of the two-tier system, they call it, sick of the DEI, all of it. But I have to ask, I really have to stop and ask a question. Where was all this talk in 2020? 10 years ago, 5 years ago, 10 years ago, 20 years ago, last year? Because this thing he's talking about, this so-called, quote-unquote anti-white agenda, anti-white system, didn't just creep up on us, folks. Didn't just come about one day. The rot is deep. So where was Farage, 5, 10, 15 years ago? Well, oh, that's right. He wasn't talking about it, was he? Because he doesn't care. Okay, look, and a lot of people are going to be tempted to say to me in the comment, you're focusing on the wrong thing, you're purity spiraling. After all, look, Farage said it, it's a victory in itself, take the W, don't mind about the motive so much, let it play out, and I get it. I get the temptation. I get the temptation to say, this is a culture war victory, the right wing is finally winning. But that assumes that there are these two discrete sides in the culture war, one of which might trounce the other, come out victorious. But that's not the case. I mean, really, there's just two sides of the same goddamn coin that always end up profiting the ruling class forever. Politics is a Punch and Judy show. Some elite is the puppet master, and we're just the dupes in the audience, playing along as if this is real life. So look, I want to say to people, the overt window isn't shifting to the right necessarily. for good reason. Nigel hasn't, because of organic, traction or whatever. Nigel hasn't been, converted to a more radical brand of politics by people on Twitter or something. He's just doing his job. Him using this narrative is useful for power at this junction. How do I know that? How am I so sure? Well, Nigel is the system. Nigel is the system. He talks about in his little speech, in his little address, he talks about how the establishment was silent. The establishment in that, being the current people in cabinet, the judiciary, whatever. And yeah, they were silent. They're playing their role. But that doesn't mean that if you take a 30,000 foot view, that overall the regime, the system is against him on this, is against, this backlash happening. It actually seems like the system wants this backlash. And again, you have to start thinking why. Because this is the same system, the same regime that did all the Floyd stuff. They anointed St. George Floyd. There's been no shake-up in the ruling class. No one went anywhere. They didn't, come to find the error of their ways or anything, Look, and you look at all these organs, all these, operatives of the establishment, of the system, they're all okay with Nigel doing it. Fleet Street is okay. The newspapers in England are running the same lines. They're running cover for him. They're hoping to crown him PM. I think that's what's on the agenda here. I mean, for goodness sake, the richest man in the world has already given his assent, effectively, to this narrative, right? And given that Twitter, which he owns, is awash with all of this outrage content. I mean, you can't get away from it this week. That tells me that, in a large part, they just want you angry. They didn't suppress it. All this stuff it's not just Twitter either. I mean, this is having real-world consequences. They want you thinking like this. So no, all these anonymous posters and activists, whatever, don't get to take credit for finally getting their remigration line into the discourse, into the overton window, whatever. Because, actually, it looks like that is the exact kind of content, outrage content, that they want out there at this juncture in time. And, I mean, don't forget, it was, the Department of Homeland Security tweeted remigration a couple months ago. I mean, this stuff didn't just come out of nowhere. Okay? They're leading you somewhere. And I think people, have to get a bit clued up about some of these tricks. It's like a whole lot of boomers out there are now imagining that they're the resistance because they're openly against this DEI stuff, the woke mob, Keir Starmer, and now I guess the anti-white agenda. All this stuff has been flooding their feed, and yeah, they're against it, whatever. But just because something is being peddled, is being sold to you quite aggressively as the alternative, it doesn't, just because something looks like forbidden fruit, just because something's painted up as forbidden fruit doesn't mean it actually is. This is a tactic, right? They pretend to sell you the forbidden fruit, but that's exactly what they wanted you to eat. There's no evidence anywhere that any of this, the backlash, the remigration stuff is being suppressed anywhere. Quite the opposite. Again, look at Elon, look at Twitter, look at even out here Sky News Australia, look at the media landscape as a whole. A lot of people, this is being shoved into everyone's face this week. And they like to let you think that maybe you're like a smart boy for identifying the left as the villain, but it's like, of course they're the villain. Of course they're the villain in this kosher vaudeville, this kosher drama. They're playing the drama, the villain in this drama now, folks. Okay, and that's another question. Why this story? Why this Henry Novak story? Okay, people on Twitter have actually, interestingly, kind of clocked this. This guy's saying, well, you know, they're not drawing the same conclusion I am, but this chap's saying, what about this white couple murdered in 2007 in the United States? And it's like, yeah, for people like me, many of you maybe, who've been paying attention to this stuff for more than a decade, it's like, or longer. There's a ton of cases of anti-white violence like this, covered up, you know, actively covered up by the system. Maybe none as perfect as this Novak thing for like the narrative, but none of them got used. You know, none of these stories were in the public mind. None of these stories were pushed into your feed. None of them got used by the next Prime Minister of the United Kingdom. You know, the next Prime Minister of the United Kingdom didn't bet his career on this all working. But look, you know, the fact that all of these cases were atrocious, all of them abominable, all of them condemnable, all of them regrettable, all of them awful, disgusting. But why do they need your anger here? Okay? There's one writer, I just want to say this, there's one writer who says, if it's headline news, it's a ruse. And maybe some people won't like me saying that. Maybe some people will think we've just got to be incensed. We've got to be angry. Look, I've been angry about every one of these cases for a long time, but you know what? It didn't go anywhere. My anger didn't go anywhere. And so I want to amend that and say, if it's on the news, it's you-know-whos, folks. It's you-know-whos. So why this story? So why this story now? Why now for the law? I think I know, frankly. Let's ask another question. Where does it go? Well, it gets you all into airsats nationalism, fake nationalism, kosher nationalism, of Tommy Robinson and co, you know, which is a front for Zionism. I hate to say it. You know, don't make me tap the sign here. Your anger, their agenda. You know, this is a fake nationalist project with Tommy Robinson at the helm.
Bring in Sikhs. Bring in Hindus.
Who, by the way, wants all these Sikhs in the UK because he's really only just going after Islam anyway. This is not a threat to anybody. At the end of the day, your anger gets siphoned into their project, which is right now. I think is Reform UK, right? It's Reform UK via Tommy Robinson and co. And look at Reform UK. I think they do want Reform UK to form government. Look who they're in bed with. They just launched their Reform Friends of Israel page. Oh, page based in Israel. You have to laugh at this stuff, folks. You really have to just laugh at it. You know, all that's happened is ex-Tories, all of them Zionists, just migrated over to Reform UK one day and changed the colour of their ties and ribbons and banners. You know, they don't even try to hide it. It's a sloppy job. It's a sloppy controlled op. It's the most obvious goddamn controlled op ever, folks. And I'm suspicious of this stuff because, you know, the people who gave us the anti-white agenda that Farage is talking about, they didn't go away. The elites, that is, you know, they didn't just up and go somewhere else. You know, maybe they went to Israel, but they're still around. So, you know, so what? So what happened? Where does this go? Your old pal Nige from the pub, innit? You know, Nige with a pint and a fag in his hand gets in, gets elected, and then maybe he sends some like totally unassimilable people home, and everyone cheers, and he maybe deports some of the people responsible for this murder, alleged murder, whatever, you know, and everyone cheers, and he goes hard on woke policing, and everyone cheers, and maybe even he bans the burqa for fun, and when everyone cheers, and then Nigel Nige mate goes, oh, but we need all you guys, like, now that we did all this for you, we need all you guys, you white guys, to go to the war that we're plotting with Russia. Like, you in, fam? You in, fam? And then, you know, he's the guy who gets to sell World War III because he banked some goodwill with all this cultural stuff, and they're not going to actually fix any of these problems at their root. You know, frankly, it's not that sophisticated what they're doing, right? Like, they know what you and I, all of us, they know what people like. They know what people want to hear. Hell, they have all this data on us. They might as well put some of it to use. And they know how that we want to be treated. So they come in, you know, think of the masses like a horse, right? They come in and they stroke people, and they go, and they use a nice calm voice, and everyone likes that. Everyone likes being, you know, spoken to like that. And then bam, they pull out the shotgun, right? Like, it's a ruse. It's a ruse, folks. So look, my message is, don't go out onto the streets. You know, don't go to the next Tommy March. And look, people will hate me for saying this, you know, because you've got to stand up and be counted, right? You've got to join the movement. Look, well, I'm not in the UK anyway, but I wouldn't go. And you know why? I think they do want you there. I think someone does want you at the Tommy rally, you know, at the, you know, the spontaneous backlash, whatever it is. They want you out there, right? There's this chap on YouTube, right? And he does these interesting videos. He walks around London. He sort of looks at, you know, interesting sites. And recently he was doing this video about, there was an anti-digital ID march in London. And they literally took that march, the anti-digital ID people, they literally took everyone past Scotland Yard, the headquarters of policing in England, in London. So everyone could be processed by the cameras there, folks. Okay? So even if they don't take you there, look, London is the most surveilled city, England, like the most surveilled country, and it's all owned by the Bank of England. Okay? So unless they take you to the Bank of England, look, don't do that! Please don't do that. I don't condone that. But you know, nothing's gonna change. You know, they're gonna fire a few DI hires in the police and government, people with make-work jobs, and whoop-de-doo. Doesn't really strike at the foundation of the anti-white thing, does it? And then we go to war with Russia. Probably. Well, anyway, I'm done here, folks. Thanks.